Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Hey, look, trying to get nutritional information from the New York Times is about as useful as figuring out what stocks to buy based on your horoscope. Frankly, most of the stuff that you see is just not worth much. There really aren't any great nutritional studies out there that really can prove one way or the other. One diet is better than another, one food is better than another, a supplement works or it doesn't work, etc. You can almost prove anything. And there's a good reason for it. It's because it's not really science. See, most of the stuff that passes off as studies show are what we call retrospective studies. And this is a very important thing for you to understand if you are going to make any heads or tails over what is pushed off as so-called science in mainstream journalism. So once you understand this, you'll start to realize that almost everything that you see nowadays is just absolutely bogus. Completely bogus. It makes no sense, and there's frankly no science behind it, because what you're seeing with most studies out there, they're epidemiological studies, usually retrospective, which means this is based on a survey, and this study was created by Harvard Health, so therefore it's got to be right. Okay, nobody's ever fact checked it, nobody's ever checked to see if this was actually workable. He just created a model and everybody's assumed that it works. But what this foods frequency survey says is, okay, sir, how many cups of ribs have you had in the last 2 years? Who in the heck knows the answer to that stupid question? I mean, I don't even measure my ribs in terms of cups, and frankly, I know how many I've had in the last month, but over the last couple of years. Basically, what you're doing is getting a guess. And probably most of the answers are kind of please the teacher answers, which means, well, they all say that you shouldn't eat too much saturated fat, so I guess I didn't eat very much, so put me down for 2 cups. And, that's not science. That's just guesswork. And then you build a model based on guesswork, saying, okay, this is what the population eats, so therefore are people dying of this particular disease? Oh my gosh, having more than 2 cups of ribs every 2 years causes heart disease. And frankly, that passes off as science. And the 3 main problems that you keep running into when it comes to the retrospective models that you see boil down to this. Number 1, any model is only going to show you what the person who created what the model originally wanted you to see. You can manipulate a model data into anything you jolly well please. I mean, it doesn't tell you much except what the modeler, the person that created the model, likes. That's what you see at the end of the day. It really doesn't show you anything. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say, for instance, somebody notices that there's people selling ice cream on Miami Beach during the summer, and people get sunburn in Miami during the summer. Therefore, the model predicts ice cream causes sunburn. And frankly, that would be science. That is about as good a science as you're seeing on the New York Times nutrition page every month. Somebody noticed that every time there's a Nicolas Cage movie released, drownings go up. In other words, if we want to save kids from drowning, we need to ban Nicolas Cage movies. That's idiocy. But that's what passes off as science. And frankly, when you look at most of the studies that are coming out, that's what they show. They just show these weird causalities that, frankly, don't mean anything. And that's one reason why I don't trust really any of the nutritional studies, but there's a second reason. The problem of null effect. Let's say you're a guy who's trying to get his master's degree or his PhD in nutrition sciences. And you go through the data sets and you realize that, wow, people who eat spinach, 2 cups of spinach every day, nothing happens. So basically, or maybe even better yet, they've studied, they look at large groups of people and they find out that a person who eats an apple a day is completely average and there's no major effect. That doesn't get reported. The null effect, the one, the studies that show that taking a certain action creates basically no results at all, never get reported. Only the sensational things. So they'll create, they'll find a small subset that, men over 65 years old who eat an apple a day die of a heart attack. They find that one small little niche. Okay, now that gets reported. So none of the null studies ever get reported. You don't take that up to your academic advisor to get them to sign off on a paper that's going to show that this particular action creates no results at all. And as a result, there's a big void in the data to show, the data really should show that certain actions are absolutely benign and they create no negative action whatsoever, so you can quit worrying about it. Because if you look at all the data on coffee, basically you come down to the effect of, drinking, 2 to 3 cups of coffee every day produces 0 result at all. And, there's no bad health effects. But that never gets reported. They only somehow, wait until they find the right subset that shows that, 3 to 18 cups of coffee every day. And they will do it oftentimes like that. Drinking anywhere from 3 or more cups of coffee, which means they were cramming 18 cups of coffee. There's some poor schmuck who drinks 18 cups of coffee a day who suddenly can't sleep. I wonder why. Duh. But that's what you see. That's what passes off as science, and the fact that the null results never get reported is crucial in understanding what you're seeing in the newspaper. And that leads us to the third one, which is reporting bias. See, what happens is you get the studies and they are looking for clickbait. They're looking for stories that will get you interested and you'll want to read. And as a result, the sensationalistic stories are the only ones that actually make the news. The things that look kind of sexy, kind of fun, get people's attention. And as a result, where does that leave you as a consumer? Absolutely terminally confused with constantly conflicting information. 1 week, calcium is vital for growing strong bones and teeth. And frankly, we'll notice a week later, calcium will kill you. What are you supposed to do as an individual? Well, what I'm going to suggest you do is quit looking at news media stories as a vehicle for getting your health information. Look at it like you would the horoscopes. They're entertaining, they're cute. Sometimes every now and then you just kind of go, wow, I should have bought a lottery ticket today because they told me it was my lucky day and I found $1 in my pocket. But are you really going to base your stock picks, your future relationships, anything else based on a horoscope? Frankly, only a handful of people do that. Everybody else just kind of looks at it for entertainment purposes. And frankly, that's what you ought to do with nutrition news, particularly in the New York Times. Those guys are just ridiculously biased, and I haven't seen a story in there yet that really tells me any real information. All of it's just sensational clickbait. So start treating it like entertainment and clickbait. Number 2, quit suspending your common sense. I mean, frankly, the way I look at any of these studies is, first of all, saying, okay, does that make sense from an ancestral standpoint? Did people eat this stuff for thousands, if not millions of years before me? And if my ancestors could not get their hands on some kava bean from some country, why would I think it's going to have anything to do with my health? I mean, if God wanted us to have it, he would have put it everywhere, not just in some small Ecuadorian place. So quit trying to figure out superfoods that are going to somehow change your life. I mean, maybe they can supplement and make things better. I mean, there's some evidence that maybe berberine can help lower your blood sugar and stuff like that. But frankly, yeah, it's grown in a relatively small area of the planet. Maybe it's useful, maybe it isn't. We find a lot of good pharmaceutical compounds from obscure plants, but don't think that eating that particular plant is going to somehow change your life. I mean, frankly, one of the things that really bugs me, if the people in the science journalism world were really sincere about what they believe, for instance, I'm talking about a low carb diet, and the scientists are always, and the medical community, the news journalists, politicians, etc., are constantly saying, can you show us one study that shows it has an effect, that it causes what you're saying? Frankly, no, because you can't do that type of study. No one can do that type of study. But no one asks them the other question, which is, doctor, can you prove to me that the diet that you were suggesting, low saturated fat, has any positive effect on health? And if they were honest, they would say no, because there can't be any. I mean, frankly, the science on worrying about salt intake, saturated fat, are mostly theories that were created back in the 1950s and completely contrary to everything that we know about what people have been eating for millennia. So why are we listening to these guys with their theories that are completely untested? Use your common sense on this stuff. There was an interesting time period from 1968 to about 78 when George McGovern, if you may not remember who George McGovern was, he was a senator, and he has a unique distinction in American political history. He got fewer votes percentage-wise for president than anybody else, but they put the loser in charge of this select committee that is going to come up with nutritional guidance for all Americans. I mean, the committee initially started off with a program to end hunger in America, and it morphed into, we're going to create the ultimate standard diet for every American. And they had hearings on this that stretched out almost a decade. And the consensus of all the scientists was, at the end of the day, there was no consensus. There were no definitive studies that showed that there was one size fits all diet for everybody in America. But politicians are politicians, and they decided, well, we've got to tell them something. And they created the food pyramid. I mean, basically, which frankly has no science. It was created by industry. So when I keep telling you that there's this big organized effort that's not working for your best interest, but for their own best interest, please keep this in mind. The politicians are trying to not look like idiots for spending years trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all diet. The industries, the commodities, the sugar producers, the corn producers, the wheat producers, we're all working very closely with them to make sure that their products were the ones that were the base of the pyramid. The medical establishment, frankly, just went along with it. And Big Pharma has been sitting in the wings waiting to sell us all sorts of new cures for all the ills that the bad diet has created. I'm telling you, none of these guys are looking after you. They're all looking after themselves with almost a callous disregard for your health. If you want to figure this out, don't suspend your common sense and quit trying to get your nutrition advice from the newspaper. It doesn't exist. None of these guys are going to be able to look after you. You have to do your own research, and you have to figure it out for yourself. You're all alone in this. But thankfully, we're all alone in this together. That's why I created this channel. And I don't think, frankly, this is going to change the world. But look, if one, maybe 5,000 people start to gather onto this information, start to figure it out, and realize, you know what? I'm going to do something about my health. I'm going to just quit. I'm going to unplug from the system because they ain't looking after me. And if we can build up a tribe of 5,000 or so people, that's 5,000 more healthy people. That's not a bad thing. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And please hit the like and subscribe button. That helps get this message out to those people that desperately need it.